Good morning, Ponderers. It's the boy. Y'all know who it is. Just wanted to kind of preface this episode by saying we're moving around a little bit and it's a little noisy at certain parts because we're at a place of business, which I think is a super cool and valuable experience for this project. But if you are turned off by the noise in the beginning, that's okay. It'll go away shortly into the episode. But this one is a pretty fun one, so why don't you grab a cup of coffee, sit down, like the video, and enjoy. Bye. Alright, welcome to episode 6, I think, of PonderCast. And we are here at Berry Coffee and Roasting, Berry Roastery with Maddie. Welcome.
Hi.
Could you just kind of like say a little bit about what you do here and what your role is in the company?
Yeah, so this is a shared roastery space, so there's a lot of local coffee people who work here. I operate Vitality Roasting, so I roast all our coffee and do our marketing and social media and just kind of all around do the coffee stuff for them.
And you said you're at Vitality. How many people distinctly share this space?
I think it's like 12 of us or something, but there's like a few bigger companies, a few smaller companies. Yeah.
Sweet. I guess first things first, we can just kind of get into how you came around to coffee. It's a little loud. We can wait a sec.
Everybody comes back from lunch at like 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Sitting in a good time. That'll stop in like 10 seconds.
Okay. Sweet. This is the fun of shooting in a different place every time.
Yeah. No, and this is very lively too. So if this doesn't like work out, we can always go into the quieter room.
Word. Okay. That's sweet. Alright, I feel like that's quieted down, back from a little break. Could you just talk a little bit about kind of how you came to be so involved in the company and like your journey as a coffee roaster?
Yeah, so I started baristing when I was 15 or 16 maybe at a small coffee shop in the burbs. And then I started working at Black Coffee and Waffle Bar and we roast coffee for them. So I worked there for like a year or so and then started baristing at Vitality and then they needed a new coffee roaster, so I started getting trained in slowly and then, you know, just worked my way up with like people leaving and just kind of ended up running things.
Yeah. So what is this machine that you're using right here? It's a little bit in frame. You guys can't see all the cool buttons, but it's a little bit spaceship vibe going on.
Yeah.
What is this machine for specifically?
So this machine is roasting the coffee. It comes to us green and like unroasted or whatever. This machine has a rotating drum in it and gas flames underneath. So we basically put the green beans into the rotating drum and then cook it over 12 minutes. And then we put it in a cooling tray and then it's pretty much ready to, you know, brew into a cup at that point.
So kind of an autonomous process.
Yeah.
What do you think the benefits are of like paying attention to the roast and kind of, I don't necessarily want to say artisan, but like small company, small batch coffee? What do you think the kind of benefit is to shopping from people like Vitality?
I think that the best benefit is having fresh coffee and coffee where you know where it's coming from. So we have a bit more of a close relationship to the farmers and obviously put a lot more care and attention into it since it's such small batches. We've like specially curated our roast profiles, so it's not as simple as just like dropping it in and cooking it. We control like how much air we're putting in, how much gas is going on. So there's a lot of like physics and chemistry, and we also taste our coffees weekly to make sure that they're like high quality and stuff. So I think when you're buying from a smaller roaster, you can learn a lot more from them, and the sorry, I'm trying to think about how to say it.
You're all good.
But some of like the pretentious aspects of coffee that people hear about become like more of an accessible thing to talk and learn about if you know the roaster and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what's important to me with Vitality is having good tasting coffee that anybody can enjoy and learn about. Yeah.
Kind of shedding that like bougie artisan coffee image into just like it's good because you know what you're getting and people like it. How big of a role would you say specifically in the like local coffee scene chains play as far as like competition or people even being like open to trying out smaller places when there's so many convenient chains nearby?
I mean, Starbucks tastes bad. I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Granted, I think it's like an acquired taste. Like some people are used to the kind of coffee they get at fast places, so when they try specialty coffee, it's not what they're used to. But I think that once you get a taste for it, like I can't go back.
Did you have kind of a moment either as a consumer or as a barista where you were like, oh, this is an art, like I get this and I really like it, and like was it ever just a job, and if so, when did it kind of change into like a real passion?
I think it sounds corny, but when I was a little kid, I saw people baristaing, and you know, I looked up to them almost because they looked like the creative, fun types and stuff, and I'd always tell my mom I wanted to do that. So it was kind of a passion from an early age. But I think I started taking it really seriously when I started roasting coffee myself. That was like the really serious point. But before that, I'd like wanted to make the best cup of coffee I could and learn how to do latte art and all that fun stuff. And that kind of was another area of coffee to explore beyond just like serving up a cup of coffee.
Yeah, you said you'd been a barista since you were 15. Was that something you like sought out because you like had already wanted to do it, or was it more availability based?
It was something I sought out because when your options are like, I'd never gotten into retail work as a kid. I started off at McDonald's and then a pizza restaurant and then Noodles and Company, and I was tired of coming home smelling like garlic and grease.
Yeah,
so I was like, I want to come home smelling like coffee. I think that that's a lot better.
Fun side benefit of working in it.
Totally. And it just seemed like a more, like a, not classy job, but like a higher step in my career.
Yeah. Like even off the basis of it being at chain stuff, like chain places, I almost just said restaurants twice. Hello.
You're good.
But like even in places that are more fast coffee, you still have to brew it. There's still that chemical process. Kind of on that topic, when you were younger, like in high school and such, did you enjoy science classes?
I did, yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, and math. Yeah, I mean, I was an art kid, so it wasn't like my top priority, but I was always good at it and understood it.
Do you think that interest carries over into this process?
Definitely. I mean, you can see I've got like a chart going here of like the temperatures and the rise over run and stuff. I thought I was never going to use those pieces of knowledge ever again.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was useful in the end and helps me understand the physics of what's going on inside the coffee. Yeah.
All right, so we are moved into kind of a different space, and we're moved onto cupping. Could you say a little bit about what you're doing here and like why this is an important part of the process?
Yeah, so cupping is a quality control method for making sure our coffee's good and just kind of checking in with it regularly. We also try to eliminate as many variables as possible when trying our coffee this way, so it's like the most scientific way of tasting it. Because, you know, if you go into a coffee shop and one person brews the coffee kind of different than the other person, it's going to taste different, but this time we know like there's exactly the same amount of beans in each cup, the same water, it's filtered, it's at the right temperature, the right times and stuff like that, so it's just the most precise way we can taste our coffee.
So it's kind of an experimental stage before it goes to the consumer or the vendor. Sweet. And what specifically are you like looking for during this process?
Well, I think I've gotten to know the coffees that we have pretty well, so I know what they're supposed to taste like. So if they don't taste like that, I'll look back at my notes from earlier in the day when I was roasting and check what could have made it taste different. So sometimes if you cook the coffee for too long, too slow, it gets like a baked burnt taste in it. So then we could shorten our batch sizes or our batch like times next week. We're just talking about cupping. Yes. Awesome.
Second guest, Meg, also from Vitality Roasting.
Hello.
Grab my notebook. Recenter this. Meg, what's your history with coffee and Vitality specifically?
Well, I feel like classically I started at Starbucks at the age of 16. And then from there I kind of like always loved being a barista and ended up working at my college cafe. And then I worked with Fiddlehead Coffee Company for, I think, about a year as a barista. And then they were hiring an apprentice roaster. And so I moved up to the cities and learned how to roast. And then, unfortunately, they went bankrupt. So, fortunately, I started working with Maddie before they went bankrupt. So I was roasting with Vitality. When did I start roasting with you? Like August?
No, it had to have been before that. It was like July. Or June.
Yeah. And so now I get to roast with Vitality, which is awesome. I have such a good time, and I feel like we get to like experiment and like troubleshoot all the time, and yeah, it's really awesome.
And Vitality is a storefront downtown, right?
Yeah.
How much would you guys say you split time between here and the actual like brick and mortar storefront?
I mean, you don't really work there.
I
I don't
don't.
barista there anymore very much. I will like from time to time, but I do go work from there since you know this is like a shared space. I don't really have like an office necessarily, so I like to go work from there. Yeah.
It's so fun. I love it.
Action.
All right, we are back yet again. My phone just died, so if that cut off, or storage, whatever, if it cut off abruptly, my bad. This is episode 6. We're all still learning. But right now, we're going to learn a little bit about each of these blends, or whichever y'all would like to talk about. So we have just grounded up a ton. Which one would you guys say is like your favorite, or maybe a notable one that you think is popular, perhaps?
I usually feel like pretty excited about our Honduras because it's our lightest roasted coffee. And to me, I feel like you can get all like the flavor nuances when you're roasting your coffee light for the most part. And it's so like berry forward, and it's just like really like fun and like something different than like the normal like Folgers dark roast situation, you know?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
I would say the same. Yeah, the Honduras is like, it's really remarkable. I do like a good standard cup of coffee, which I think we have a couple of those, but I like things that are fun and exciting. So.
You guys blew the fuse again.
We blew the fuse? No.
Oh!
Why do you guys always do that?
Not every single time, just like twice.
You guys are the only
So what happens when the fuse blows?
The
What?
Vikings guy deflates.
That's what happens.
Which
Oh, I gotta.
No, it was warm. I even set the temperatures correctly.
I was accused of some things.
You're the only one that is cold.
Oh, he's going back up. Look at him go. Beautiful. Little one. Alright, honestly, I kind of forgot what we were talking about before the storage went out and the Viking deflated. But,
I think you said
yeah.
what's surprising about being on like the production side of
Yes,
coffee.
yeah.
And to me, I was like surprised by like how many details go into roasting. Like I didn't realize that there were so many factors that went into it. Like I knew there were different origins, but I didn't realize there were different like processes in which like the coffees are like when they're grown. There are also different like varietals. Like there's so much that goes into it beyond like it starts off with so many factors, and then once you get to roasting, then you have even more decisions to make. It's just there's so many different things that can happen with coffee. And then once you get to like the shop side of it, then you can like cold brew it, or you can pull an espresso shot or drip it. Like
Some variety in the bean, but also in the roast and in the preparation.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stages of change.
yeah.
That's why it's so important at this stage to reduce the variables when we're cupping our coffee, because if there's so much that goes into it, if we can just control that as much as we can, it's really helpful.
Yeah.
So for Vitality specifically, where do you get the majority of your beans from as far as like supply chain?
There's a large importer in the Twin Cities called Cafe Imports, and we get most of our coffee from them. Minneapolis is kind of a big hub for coffee, which is really convenient because if you're a small roaster and you can't buy that many bags of coffee up front, it's nice to have somewhere in town where there's like a huge warehouse of a bunch of different kinds of beans and stuff. So that's where we get most of it, and then we try to source some of it from smaller importers as well when we can. Yeah.
And as far as like working with vendors in the cities and like different shops, what have you kind of noticed about building those relationships?
I think a lot of people have a really close relationship with their roaster, and that's really nice. There's a few shops we work with that we've really bonded with, and but it's kind of hard to break through into new territory because everybody knows a roaster already. Yeah. But those relationships are really important, so it's nice.
There was an article in Apartment Guide from 2019 that said Minneapolis has the 7th best coffee scene in the nation.
Oh.
So thank you to Apartment Guide. As far as like going around the city and trying different places and different shops with different roasters, what kind of trends have you picked up on as far as like what makes a Minneapolis coffee shop versus other kind of culturally specific uses of the drink?
I think like when my band's on tour, we try to try a bunch of different coffees, and I think what Minneapolis has is like a lot of specialty coffee shops. There's a huge variety in how many places we have. I mean, it's rather oversaturated, but there's no shortage of good coffee shops, whereas some other cities it's like there's 2 or 3 that are like okay coffee shops, but there's a lot of people here doing cool stuff with their coffee, so it's fun to be able to try so many different coffees that you wouldn't maybe be able to in other places. Yeah.
Is there any places in the cities that you would like shout out as like favorites or places you have like a good relationship with?
I think SK Coffee is one of my favorites. They always have something cool in to try, and then Wesley Andrews. They always have good coffees as well. So those 2 spots are like my favorites for like quality and fancy coffee to try.
Same.
Yeah.
Those are my top 2 also.
Sick.
Yeah.
Kind of venturing in, you are also a musician. And being a pretty active member of both the local coffee scene and the local music scene, what kind of similarities and differences do you see in those subcultures?
I think like the biggest similarity is like the overlap of baristas and creative people. A lot of artists work in coffee as well, and so I think there's a huge section of the music scene that's also involved in coffee somehow, which is really cool. And I don't know, I think like half of my bandmates work in coffee.
Word,
so
okay.
it's very like common for us. Yeah.
Sweet. Working in a cooperative space with other roasters and like working in different coffee shops over time, what are like the big lessons that you've taken away as you've worked your way up in the scene?
I mean, I was telling you earlier, I used to work in like a little office room, like with one other person or alone, and so I didn't really, you know, you can do so much research on your own, but learning from other people's perspectives is way more valuable. So here I've gotten to talk to lots of like experts in the local scene and stuff, and that's helped me as a roaster and just generally as a coffee person.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And are these about ready for the next step?
Yeah, they are.
Sweet. So what is the next step of the cupping process now that they have the water poured in and are brewing?
So we'll break the crust, so the coffee grounds kind of float to the top, and we'll just break it with our spoons and smell it at the same time. It kind of releases like a big like aroma all at once when we do that, and then after that we'll like skim the top of the beans and then start tasting them.
Sweet.
Yeah. So we usually do like 1 cup each so we can each smell the different coffees. Yeah.
All right, so we're kind of in the middle of the tasting process now. How are we feeling about this batch from today?
Well, I tried our less fun coffees first, like our standard kind of coffees, and they're all roasted a little darker than we normally do.
Yeah.
Word, okay.
Which
Good to know.
I'm trying to learn to like dark roasts because in specialty coffee there's been a big push towards light roasted coffees. And I love that, but I also know that customers like coffee that tastes normal.
That's fair.
And it's like
I'm that customer.
yeah,
A little bit.
Yeah.
So the longer you cook the coffee, the more flavors of the fruit you're gonna cook out because it's a cherry. So when you leave it a light roast, you kind of leave some of those sugars you can kind of caramelize them a bit too much if you roast it too dark. So,
Okay.
but I like how these are tasting though.
I do too.
I like the Brazil darker because sometimes it tastes a little bit too peanutty and salty.
Yeah, it's like super nutty. Yeah.
So how dark do you typically roast this Brazil?
We typically roast it to 420 degrees, and today it was 424.
Ooh.
Yeah. So just a little darker than normal. And then the Colombia, I believe, was the same. Yeah.
What's the kind of range of temperature between light and dark that are like the extremes? Like how many degrees really makes an impact in how the bean turns out?
It's really subtle, honestly.
It
Because,
is,
I
yeah.
mean, like our Ethiopia, I dropped it into the cooling tray at 407.
Word.
So it's very sensitive. But I think it also makes a difference, like how the curve of the roast goes. Because if you have the beginning go pretty quick and then kind of slow and steady cook it for too long, it can also get pretty dark.
Yeah.
When you say the curve of the roast, is that like the heat changing or what makes that curve?
It's the rate of change in the temperature of the bean.
Word. Okay.
Yeah, which is kind of like a skewed data point because the beans are going to be room temperature when you drop them in. So the curve looks like it dips really far down and then comes back up, but that's just because they're room temperature at first. But yeah.
That's sweet. I might hop in and try some. Which of these
Yeah.
spoons?
I think this one was just used for scraping, so it is clean.
Sweet.
Yes.
Which one would you recommend someone who drinks dark roast on a normal day would
I kind of
would
think
enjoy
that you
first?
should try them all, but I think you
Okay.
should start on this side.
Yeah.
Right.
This is our espresso.
Espresso 2.
And this is the darkest roasted today.
Word. Okay. What is, well, I do this. What is the difference between espresso 2 and 4?
Those are just different batches. So technically these are both supposed to be roasted the same. However, the computer started updating when
Word.
I was roasting espresso 2. So I lost my graphs, which is like the thing that I follow to like keep the roast on track. So I was just kind of blindly roasting and had to just guess when to drop it.
Sweet. My personal review, it's good as hell. That's like what I'm looking for. Also good as hell. I just really like espresso. So that's kind of my square one.
Shots today. Josh brought a tam.
Oh my gosh, we should do that later.
Yeah, we should.
How exciting.
Yeah. The Ethiopia tastes different to me.
Oh, it doesn't have water.
So we
Okay.
can't.
Maybe next time. Yeah, do you want to try some of these ones?
Yeah, go for it.
So how would you kind of describe the flavor profiles? We talked a little bit about the Brazil, but like Honduras and Ethiopia, going from different places across the globe, what trends do you kind of see in beans from like Africa versus South America, for example?
Well, Ethiopia in particular is really fruity and floral usually, whereas like the Brazil is pretty nutty and chocolatey. But I think that's because like Ethiopia is like the birthplace of coffee, and so the conditions there are like ideal for growing coffee. And so like the minerals in the soil and the weather, it all kind of comes together and makes the coffee taste really sweet. Yeah.
So you were mentioning while we had stopped recording, wanting to kind of say some stuff about these. What were y'all wanting to say?
Oh, it was just about how dark roast is like cooking out some of the flavors.
Word, okay.
Yeah, so I think I did talk about that.
Sweet. We can cut that question. Kind of hopping back into music for a sec, doing an art form that is like, there's an immediate response for, like
Yeah.
playing a show and being able to look into a crowd and see how people are responding to it. Comparing that to something like coffee, where you're making a product that is largely consumed in another space or in someone's home, how do you kind of get feedback from your coffee customers, and how does that feel compared to playing music?
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like this like cupping the coffees is one of the best ways we get feedback, even though it's just like each other usually, but sometimes we'll make our friends try our coffee too, which helps a lot. And then as for the cafe, like people will tell us that they like the coffee, which is nice. We have a lot of regulars. Being in the Skyway, it's lots of business people on their way to work every day, so they make the same stop, and so that's always nice when they tell us they like their coffee. Yeah, but it is, I mean,
Sorry.
oh no, it's okay.
I was holding it until you
Oh,
went with your thought.
that's
and then
okay.
I accidentally hit start.
That's fine. Thank you.
Do you want to hop in and say anything while we're all here?
What?
We're
Charlie.
doing a little podcast. Do you
Oh,
want to
you
hop in and
should.
like say anything about what you do?
Me?
Yeah,
I operate it here.
you should. All right.
Are you taking care of checking the samples?
I need more
Yeah, but it is interesting having like less instant gratification than playing shows. It's definitely like a longer process, but it's very fulfilling. I mean, people need their cup of coffee every day,
Yeah.
so just knowing that we're providing that is cool too.
It not being something that's so like one-time experience as a show and more like a constant experience.
Yeah.
Sweet. Oh. So discombobulated. I'm kind of towards the end of the things that I like took notes on. Sorry, this is an embarrassing episode for me as a host.
It's okay.
I think you're doing a great job.
Yeah,
you
you're
have
doing
good
great.
questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good
I'm trying my
questions.
best.
What's up? Yeah? Okay,
I'm thinking. I'm sorry. We can just rank them. Alright, so both of you kind of said that you prefer having some of the flavors out compared to a darker roast where some of the flavors burnt out. Between the 7, I just learned how to count yesterday, between the 7 different coffees on this table, what would you say each of your like top 3 are?
Well, I don't like the Ethiopia today as much as I normally do.
Honestly, same, yeah.
Usually it's one of my top 2, but it was kind of tangy and sour.
Yeah.
But I'd say my top 3 were the Honduras, the Brazil, and the decaf today. Yeah.
Sweet.
Mine are... I actually was surprisingly, I liked the Colombia. Usually I'm not in love with our Colombia because it's a little too dark for me. But I liked the Colombia, Honduras, and decaf.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
I really like the espresso. I'm a dark roast shot of espresso type of guy. Like just mud, straight mud. But I also really liked the Brazil. That was really good.
Cool.
For each of you, when you're like getting coffee somewhere or making it for yourself, what would you say is like your ideal preparation if you had like a whole barista station at your disposal to make your perfect cup of coffee? What would it be?
I'd say a pour over.
We
Yeah.
have the same answer.
Yeah.
I want to pour over too, yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like that's good. It's good.
It is
I don't know.
good.
Espresso can be kind of finicky to get right, and then sometimes I don't want milk in my coffee. So having a pour over is just like a really good, intentionally brewed cup of coffee. Yeah.
And before I started roasting, I was always getting Americanos. Like, I think that was just my go-to. And then when I learned, like, how nuanced, like, just drip coffee can be, I now will basically only get coffee. Unless I, like, really trust that the cafe that I'm going to has, like, really well-trained baristas that, like, know how to pull well-calibrated shots. But there's like also nothing wrong with going to like a Starbucks and like getting like a shot there too. Like that's also a great way to get your caffeine. Yeah.
Working in more like chain type places, how much of an emphasis do you think they put on training people on the like scientific and kind of creative side of roasting versus just the business side where like it is a store model that's based more on efficiency?
I haven't worked at a coffee shop that's like that, so I don't really... I guess my first coffee shop I worked at was more of like a second wave coffee shop, so it was definitely more efficiency focused, but even then we still had
looks
like
pretty.
recipes and stuff to follow that were like crafted by us. So it wasn't
Okay.
just like, I
Actually-
think Starbucks has like charts and stuff where it's like you have
Yeah.
to do a
I think it
certain
actually that's pretty low.
I was a sandwich artist for a little bit at Subway,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
they similarly have like a map with how many grams of every ingredient you're supposed to put on a sandwich. Working at McDonald's way back when, do you have
Yeah.
any tea about, I feel like I can't use that word, but do you have any tea about McCafe and how they do it there?
Whoa.
I mean, I was 14 when I worked at McDonald's,
Word,
so it was a
okay.
long time ago.
Yeah. Does that look handsome?
That does
Wait,
look
that's
nice.
a
Wait,
shot?
you did that?
Yeah.
It's not a shot. I just stopped it. I have no way of getting the timing to program right now. So, I don't know.
Wait, so what is it?
Random coffee. No, I just turned it
Got
on.
some
I'm like,
crema.
yeah, it looks like a shot. Now I'll hit stop.
Hey, coffee's coffee.
Yeah.
Careful, don't say that around some new people here. I
Sorry,
say
coffee is art.
pour over and Chemex, it looks the same, right? And then other people are like, no, it's not. I said, they're not the same. It's like important.
Yeah.
They're similar.
What do you guys think are the kind of like prevailing mindsets about like coffee is an art form, this is the best way or right way to do it? Like people who are a bit more headstrong about the craft, what do you think they tend to focus on a lot, where a more like casual roaster or barista might care a little less?
I think I did 27 because
I think like, well, I mean, my personal philosophy is that
No,
anytime someone has a
17,
specific
17.
rule or something, there's also a scenario where that's not the right thing to do. And roasting and making coffee is a lot more intuitive than people think.
Yeah, I'm
Because,
going
I
to do
mean,
that too.
while it is a science, you can't quantify every single thing about the experience of drinking coffee. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I try and find a balance between like casual drinking and brewing coffee and like knowing a lot about it.
Yeah. And like nothing about coffee is like right or wrong. Like everyone's opinion like kind of matters in some sort of way, and I feel like I've learned so much from working at Starbucks, and then I've learned so much from working at like a specialty coffee shop, like, and it's so cool to be able to use the knowledge of both and kind of like be more flexible and not always have like a strict set of rules, because like people have different preferences, and like coffee is coffee in the end, and yeah, you can be really like bougie about it or have all these like things that you need to focus on, and that's so cool.
Yeah.
But no one is wrong.
Yeah, it is a spectrum on like the, well, I like this particular coffee versus just like, I think it's good.
Yeah.
I feel like the pizza argument of like all pizza's kind of good
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
comes into play, for me personally at least.
Yeah.
Though there are certainly people who are more, this is what I drink and this is how I make it.
Yeah.
But
I think as
always
long as
good.
it makes you happy, that's like the,
Yeah.
that's always like the, when we're cupping our coffees, like we can get really nitty gritty with it, but then at the end of the day, it's like, were we happy walking away from the table and knowing that this is what our customers are going to drink? That's like the most important priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working for a company and like making a product to be sold, how often do you get to try like, I'm just gonna experiment with this roast and like see what happens and do my thing, versus like, I got a roast for this order, or where we just like need to make a batch of this particular thing?
I think it's when we're getting new coffees in, we have to craft a specific profile for it. So that's probably when we get the most experimentation. But then again, I mean, like today our computer started updating, so we had to just roast from our hearts, kind of.
Yeah.
Which, granted, I have like a list of like, you know, I've memorized like the temperatures and the different gas adjustments and stuff that I usually do. So it's very close to what it normally is, but it's probably slightly different. And there's something kind of exciting about just going off the beaten path and just trying our best.
Yeah.
Like, what's the guy's name that just came in?
Charlie?
Yes, Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie.
Like, he was just saying, like, you pulled it and it looked good. Like, it, you know, imperfect by some standard, perhaps, but, like, it's cool. It
Yeah.
still made something.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can kind
Let me just
of,
grab some of the Honduras quick. Oops,
we
sorry.
can kind of move into wrapping up. Is there anything that either of you guys would like to bring up that hasn't been brought up, or like closing statements about what you do here or what you would want people to know about this craft?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I kind of think, well, starting at Starbucks, I think I didn't realize, this is kind of going back to like what I've said before, but like all of the funny nuances of coffee. Like now roasting, like it's so cool to see how much work is put in before you get your cup of coffee. Like it's so cool to know like what efforts are being done in terms of like sustainability and like connecting people with each other and like with the farmers and then the roasters. Like there's like the whole process of it is so like beautiful, and I kind of like now I romanticize it, and it makes my cup of coffee taste so much better every day. Like now that I have all this knowledge of where it's coming from and the whole process. And yeah, and I think like going to a specialty coffee shop, like it's awesome when customers like get to gain that knowledge and like have that information about like what is in their cup and what, how many hands went into it to make it happen. Like that's so cool to me, and I just love like sharing that with people, like through like giving them coffee and making it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most exciting moments of roasting coffee. Was the first time I had roasted a batch of coffee and then gone to the cafe that I worked at and pulled a shot, knowing that I'd roasted it and brewed it, and getting to have my hands on so much of the process. Because we can only do so, like, you know, we're on the tail end of things. You know, it takes years for different varietals to come into harvest and stuff, and you know, get shipped here, and all of like the processes that happen to the freshly harvested beans and stuff. So it's nice to be involved with all of that. I think that that's what Vitality in particular has offered me, is a sense of connection through the entire process. Even though I'm like running a lot of it now, I still get to go to the cafe and brew my own coffee when I want to.
So kind
and
of seeing
become a part of
beyond
that.
just the one cup that you're drinking into like the whole process of how it came into that cup.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people get disconnected when they get like higher up in things, just because they don't have to, you know, do so much. I mean, there's some coffee companies where there's like a green coffee importer, there's a roaster, there's a production roaster, there's the baristas, and it's all so separate. Whereas I think we get to really have fun with every aspect of that process. It's really valuable.
Can I ask how many employees Vitality has, as far as you know?
Of the roastery, 2.
Word,
So
okay.
it's us. And
Nice.
then,
Sweet.
but the cafe, there's either 4 or 5 baristas right now, and then like some management and stuff.
But like a small operation.
Definitely a small
Sweet.
operation. Yeah.
Well, awesome. We mentioned the storefront in, you said it's on the Skyway?
Yeah.
Sweet, okay. What like landmarks near downtown could people find that nearby?
It's on 6th and Marquette, so it's right across from the Wells Fargo building, and it's by the IDS building, so it's right in the heart of downtown.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And y'all have a website, it's vitalityroasting.com, correct?
Yeah.
Well, sweet. Go there. Do y'all have like Instagram or socials for the company as well?
Yeah, it's just at Vitality Roasting on Instagram. That's probably the best place to find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much
you.
for hopping around and being a part of this. For the Ponderers, there's like 20 of them. Oh my god, I wrote an outro and I've forgotten it I hope you found something either interesting, informative, or insightful. I've forgotten that almost every episode so far, but I
Good job.
haven't. I think I've caught myself every time.
Nice.
But thank y'all so much for being a part of this.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for watching, and subscribe. For the outro, I say bye and then wave at the camera if we all
Okay.
want to.
Bye.
You are watching Ponder Media.